So, it's time to reveal what won the poll for our bonus objective. For this month's theme, I went with films that Don Bluth has done, either having major influence as an animator, or as a creator in general, so long as they were animal-themed. However, The Rescuers and The Land Before Time got into a tie, so I put in a tiebreaker poll for them, and LBT won. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. As I may have mentioned before, this, along with All Dogs Go to Heaven, were among the first Don Bluth films I've ever seen growing up. But this one I feel left a better impression on me because of how good it was. Since yes, I did grow up on the sequel films. More on that later. While the usual Bluth producers and staff were involved, this one has the honor of having some other esteemed people on board, such as George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Kathleen Kennedy, and even Frank Marshall. There's a few other things to note about, with at least 2 of them regarding production and the like, but for now, I want to at least go back to a time when I was young and dinosaurs were both cool and scary. Let's not waste any more time. This is The Land Before Time. It begins with the miracle of life, a reminder of where it all started and where it eventually ended up, with narration by Pat Hingle as he talks to us about life in the past.
Once upon this same earth, beneath this same sun, long before you, before the ape and the elephant as well, before the wolf, the bison, the whale, before the mammoth and the mastodon, in the time of the dinosaurs.
Fun fact, Spielberg and Lucas wanted this film to have no dialogue from the dinosaurs. Yet they scrapped that idea since it wouldn't appeal to children. Maybe one day we'll see such a film outside of Fantasia. Of course, none of that changes the great lesson that is the circle of life. For besides establishing predator and prey relations, they also make note about how all of this is governed by the existence of plant life. The leaf in particular, since for many, they wouldn't be able to live. In Don Bluth fashion, we get to see them hatch from their eggs, and it's all so cute and adorable, even if one of them nearly gets eaten by a Megalocles, or however you say it. Probably the first moment that can be a bit frightening is when the last surviving egg of these Apatosaurus is nearly taken by a Struthiomimus. Not only should that egg have burst open, but that baby should have multiple concussions. It's okay though, it's protected by plot armor, because it's our main character, Littlefoot.
Here I am.
Oh, don't be scared. It's just Helen Shaver from Law & Order. Now, obviously, I'm not certain on every bit of animal behavior in this movie, especially one regarding dinosaurs, so some of their behavior that can be seen with mammals, I'm willing to let slide since these creatures even have their own terminology for child audiences to understand. And I also won't go over everything they get wrong regarding how some dinosaurs exist in what's supposed to be the late Cretaceous period, their use in anachronisms, especially in later films, or the fact the designs of the dinosaurs don't always reflect the modern research findings. Like Jurassic Park, a lot is based off findings at the time, or what they find to be a popular design, that they continue to use for consistency. If you really want to see every inaccuracy the films have, the Land Before Time wiki has you covered. So some time passes and Littlefoot can talk, as here he's voiced by Gabriel Damon, and we learn more about the importance of food during a time of famine. They also make good on the imagery, and showing that a single leaf is something special to these dinosaurs.
It is very special, and it'll help you grow strong. Where we are going, there are so many of these leaves.
More importantly, as Mother mentioned, Because of the ever-changing environment, this is why they have to find their way to the Great Valley, a place where these tree stars grow in abundance and they don't have to worry about any more troubles. It almost seems like a place of legend, since she only knows of the way to there, but hasn't been there herself. The reason for this belief?
Some things you see with your eyes. Others you see with your heart.
I don't understand, Mother.
It's all about having faith in a brighter future and following what your heart feels is right. While this could reflect like religion for dinosaurs, it could also explain the animal instinct of following the path to better locale during the seasons. And speaking of animal instinct, here is another way the film relates interspecies tolerance to racism.
Come, Sarah. Three horns never play with long necks.
Oftentimes, when not talking about territory and the like, animals will often only tolerate members of their own species and sometimes put up with non-members, but prefer not to interact with them. Thus, it makes sense that if they could talk, this might be something they'd say to each other. Doesn't stop Littlefoot from asking, and Mother saying not to worry about it. I imagine this is the one thing she may be wrong about, keeping to themselves because that's how it's always been. How much you wanna bet you need each other to survive? I say this because of the next scene, where he separates himself at night to go after a frog.
You did. Go away. That's my hopper. I saw him first.
Actually, you're both wrong, because Froggy here belongs to Big the Cat. They do get a little bit of fun in, despite Sarah's earlier attitude. Also, she seems smaller than him than usual. But seeing as this is Don Bluth, it is time for much sadness and despair in the form of a T-Rex, aka... Hey look, it's One Eye from the Dino King! Ooh, yeah, this is pretty scary, and for more than what he does in a little bit, but originally they wanted to make him even scarier, but couldn't without bumping the rating up to PG. While they wanted this all to be G-rated. Keep that in mind. This is a G-rated film. Soon after blinding the Sharptooth, which is part of a little continuity issue I'll mention later, Littlefoot's mother shows up to fight in a very intense sequence. Okay, I've seen Mrs. Brisby draw blood trying to open a cage, and her house dropped on Nicodemus. Yet this is actually more horrific because that T-Rex just ripped the back of what is essentially her spine. Shadow or not, this alone should have bumped it up to PG regardless. She seemingly defeats the monster. However, more trouble brews when the land itself begins to quake. Also, Mother disappears in between shots. Okay, if there's anything this movie doesn't do well, is scene continuity. Since it's almost amusing that these kids got separated from Mama Longneck, only to run into the Sharptooth, who should have been knocked out away from them. And something of note is that 10 minutes of film was cut out of the movie, some of it even being animated, and some of which include the Sharptooth encounter and how he was injured and the like. This could explain some of the sequences turning out weird, but otherwise it's why I mentioned that the film has continuity issues. Because again, they needed the rating to be G. With that all said though, the Sharptooth is defeated for real, but the ensuing quakes prevent them from rejoining their herds. Of course, it's hard to believe anyone survived when we see some dinosaurs fall to their deaths. G-rated film, people! And Don Bluth wanted it darker, but Spielberg said no. But at least Spielberg got to have his Bambi analogy, only here the child gets to talk with their dying parent.
Please get up.
I'm not sure I can, Littlefoot.
Yes, you can. Get up.
Dear sweet Littlefoot, do you remember the way to the Great Valley?
I guess so. But why do I have to know? You're gonna be with me.
I'll be with you, even if you can't see me.
What do you mean if I can't see you? I can always see you.
Littlefoot, let your heart guide you. It whispers, so listen closely.
Mother? Mother?
Is your heart broken yet? Don't worry, there's still plenty of film left. Well, as he walks alone, he meets the narrator, voicing some random dinosaur, who ends up consoling him.
Not fair. She should have known better. That was Sharptooth. It's all her fault.
All whose fault?
Mother's.
Oh, I see. I see.
Why did I wander so far from home?
Oh, it's not your fault. It's not your mother's fault. Now, you pay attention, old Rooter.
Yeah, but
It is nobody's fault. The great circle of life has begun. But you see, not all of us arrive together at the end.
what'll I do? I miss her so much.
And you'll always miss her. But she'll always be with you, as long as you remember the things she taught you. In a way, you'll never be apart. For you are still a part of each other.
Thanks, Rooter. You taught the children well about coping with loss. Of course, he still feels sadness for a little while, but as Rooter said, it will eventually come to pass, since soon he receives a piece of hope, like a sign from Mother that he must move on and find the Great Valley just as she would have wanted.
Follow the bright circle past the great rock that looks like a long neck, and past the mountains that burn. Will be in your heart, Littlefoot. Let your heart guide you.
Well, after a brief moment of denial, he begins his journey, running into Sarah, who is not in the mood of joining up with him because she's only interested in rejoining her herd. Because if anything, her kind are pretty stubborn.
Help from a long neck. Well, at least we wouldn't be alone. Well, when I find my sisters, I won't be alone. So go away. Three horns can be very dangerous.
And she was never heard from again. He doesn't stay alone for too long as he runs into Judith Barcy's character, Ducky, in the only film where the character is super adorable and not annoying with the way she talks.
See? I'm a long neck too, see? And I have a long tail like you. All right. I'm not a long neck, I'm a big mouth. But I am all alone, I am. I lost my family in the big earthshake. You want to go with me? Yeah! Oh, yes, yes, yes. I do.
Party member get! Soon after stopping to eat, we get our next party member, Petrie, voiced by Will Ryan. Much like Ducky, he too isn't that bad here given how they portray him in later movies.
I fall. You cannot fly. But how did you get way up there?
I climb.
But you are a flyer, not a faller.
Hard thing to fly.
You could say a lot of their personality traits work for a standalone film, since this is mostly about Littlefoot. There is some growth with a few of them, but at most, it's Littlefoot and Sarah who benefit the most as fully fledged characters. Speaking of Sarah, she finds that Sharptooth again, appearing to be dead. You'd think that given how long it's been here. But of course, in her messing around, it wakes up. Guess who's going to be the predatory antagonist? They soon bump into each other again, which does lead into Sarah joining the party, though reluctantly. But first...
I met the Sharptooth.
Sharptooth!
Oh, come on, Sarah. Sharptooth is dead. He fell down into the big underground. And that's where he met me. I was all alone with him in the dark. Just the Sharptooth and me. I looked him straight in the eye and said...
And we meet the last main character who is yet to be born, and yet their parents just left them. Now just keep an eye on the child that hatches once it stops trolling Ducky.
Come out! You are all alone. Are you not scared? Huh? We're going to the Great Valley. You can go with us. Yes, you can.
Spike just went through a serious growth spurt in between shots. Either that or Ducky shrunk. And some more narration.
Hungry dinosaurs set off for the Great Valley. There had never been such a herd before. A long neck, a three-horn, a big mouth, a flyer, and a spike tail.
This could work wonders for a novel, given how it's written. One that can be just as violent as Warriors even. By the way, we're already halfway through the movie. Yeah, it's only about an hour long. Literally, it's Don Bluth's shortest film to date and only 69 minutes. Not counting Banjo the Cat, of course, whereas other films tend to go at least 10 to 20 minutes longer than this. I imagine the 10 minutes that were deleted would have made up the standard runtime, because otherwise, we're kind of flying through this. Some of these scenes on survival aren't exactly the best given the child talk at times, and I do wonder what some of this would have been like if they had gone without dialogue. Then maybe this next bit would be a little more entertaining with the Bluth style of animation.
That way! Come on! Come on! Spike! Hurry up! Ducky! Spike! Get out of there! They're eating our food! Look what they're doing. They're so greedy. What about me? I'm still hungry.
Oh, you'd think with them cleaning house they wouldn't miss the single tree with plenty of leaves left.
Hey!
No!
Whoa. Oh, okay. Hey, not too fast. Hey, not too fast. You four look so ridiculous.
Candace Hudson was responsible for voicing Sarah for the first 4 films, and she did such a good job in giving me a character I want to see injured for being a jerk. You do sort of feel bad for her though. She's just trying to act tough. Case in point, she ends up stealing the others from Littlefoot since she claims to not be afraid of Sharptooth, but then overnight they start going back to him, one by one, until Sarah is left. Reluctantly, she does join in to keep them warm at night. It's like deep down she does want friends, but her pride is what keeps her from retaining any. It's a very big deal considering they're out in a wasteland of death, and despite being different, they need each other to survive. They need to break conventions in nature to get somewhere. Like here, for instance, they get attacked by that same Sharptooth that keeps showing up in the movie. What are the odds of that? But luckily, after evading it, they find one of the landmarks that Mama Longneck mentioned. While he was wrong to doubt Sarah, if they can get past the Smoking Mountain, they'll reach their destination. With that, time for some appropriate music. Well, at least there's footsteps that show dinos have been through here. Maybe if you follow them...
I'm leaving. Sarah, we have to keep following the bright circle. I'm taking the easy way for once. But it's the wrong way. Who says? My mother. Then she was the stupid long neck too. Take that back. Never. Take it back. No.
Oh right, this is that Fallout moment. The two fight over each other's failings, leading to a rift where Sarah and the others decide to leave Littlefoot because he's probably leading them to certain death. The only problem I have with this is that it only has impact on Littlefoot and Sarah, while not as much with the others, who are just left confused and uncertain of what to believe anymore. Plus, and this is due to the reduced runtime, they only had a little over 12 minutes to really develop as a whole group before the separation. If there's one thing that drags the movie down a bit, it's the pacing. There's simply not enough time in this movie to show their struggles and really define each of them. Instead, focusing on just two of them, while giving a small bit to Petrie and his inability to fly. Ducky mainly serves to speak for Petrie and Spike, since they only have little experience with traveling as a group, so they just go wherever they think is safest. And even then, I don't know if those lost 10 minutes would have helped. I think it needed a little bit more added to the runtime to really make this divide work. In any case, Sarah's group goes through a volcanic area, and of course Petrie ends up dropping into a tar pit while Sarah keeps going. I'd say this is the part where the group isn't thinking about anything but survival, but they neglect their own safety in the process. Littlefoot returns to save everyone he can, like Ducky and Spike from a lava flow, before going to Petrie.
Let him! Spike! Oh, Petrie, I'm so happy!
Get Petrie! Petrie, go!
Admittingly, this is still just as intense as the Sharptooth stuff, because I can totally see them in this desperate situation after being left broken and confused. These kids have already cheated death so many times, and yet this may very well be it. And in Sarah's case, she's just being tormented by dinosaurs that have no reason to beat up a small child, other than maybe territorial reasons? Either way, she gets saved by the tar monster. Just kidding, it's actually her friends, who somehow got out of the tar pit.
I knew it was you all along. I know. I did.
We nearly fell in lava and drowned in tar. This is a hilarious prank.
Sarah? Sarah, come back!
Sarah was still too proud to admit that she'd gone the wrong way.
Well, we kinda figured that, but at least she knows the harm she caused. At any rate, time to deal with the elephant in the room. The Sharptooth will just keep going at them, so it's time to get rid of him first. They plan to dump him in the pond so he'll drown, but they need something to draw him out.
Now we need some bait. Me? Oh no, 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 no.
Jeez, first film Littlefoot is very mean sometimes. The plan works, they're able to draw it out. Now it's just a matter of pushing the boulder off to knock him in. Petrie nearly gets himself killed trying to provoke it, but...
I'm flying.
I'm flying! I'm flying!
Well, that makes up for his earlier deed, because now he's actually trying to save someone. But it's not enough to really win, so it's up to Sarah to deliver the final push. Damn. They actually killed a child in one of these movies. Well, fortunately, he survived just as the others were starting to mourn his loss. But now Littlefoot still feels defeated because even now, they still haven't found the Great Valley.
Littlefoot.
Mother? I tried to do what you told me, but it's just too hard.
Dude, you took on a T-Rex and won. You should be proud that you avenged your mother. And through what can be seen as an inspiration to the Lion King, Cloud Mother's symbology leads him to the final destination, the Great Valley. They went through hell and back, and now, much like the early Don Bluth films, they get their good ending. Or, if that rumor regarding the last bit of dialogue that was cut at the end was true, this ending would suggest they died at some point, and they're now in heaven. That's what the Great Valley was all along. It's heaven on earth.
It was all they dreamed it would be. A land of green, of leaves, and life. Grassy meadows, enough tree stars to feast on forever. And grazing upon them, their families.
Mama, I am flyer!
And Littlefoot found his grandmother and grandfather at last. The same loving faces he'd looked into on the day of his birth. And they all grew up together in the valley. Generation upon generation, each passing on to the next the tale of their ancestors' journey to the valley long ago.
So with that, yeah, this is still a really enjoyable movie in Don Bluth's filmography. It's essentially a journey for life as children in a dangerous period of time cling desperately to each other for survival in a harsh environment. And rightfully so, it has plenty of intense moments that make you feel for everyone involved, as well as lessons about coping with loss and finding strength and unity. The characters have their own ways of being likable, either personality-wise, humor, or in the case of Littlefoot and Sarah, their character growth. If anything, the movie's not perfect, as, again, the pacing doesn't allow a whole lot of characterization for the other three main characters, who ultimately just feel like side characters who tag along without much growth. There's some early inconsistency with scene continuity that came from earlier cuts, and it often makes you wonder how differently this all could have been if they went the silent route. The animation for the time is still a sight to behold, especially with the backgrounds and detailed objects. The voice cast is solid, and the music is sublime. While not the best Don Bluth movie, it's easy to recognize this as a classic that everyone should see. Naturally, such as the case with An American Tail, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and even The Secret of NIMH, The Land Before Time was subjected to a series of sequel films by Universal Animation Studios, all of which being direct-to-video. As fate may have it, they became the most popular of the non-Don Bluth sequels, where they go on to have 13 sequels and a TV series. While 12 of the films came out roughly a year or two apart from each other, the most recent one came out in 2016, and with the recent acquisition of Amblin Entertainment by DreamWorks, there's always the possibility that we'll see more of this franchise in the future. As for the other films we do have, I don't know if I will look at them in the future, since many other reviewers have done them, and probably better than I could. Still, if you want me to look at them all next year instead of the Air Bud films, I'll probably put up a Twitter poll or something sometime later this year, and you can decide that way. Until then, I'm the Media Hunter. Media's my prey, and reviewing them my way.
Don't lose your way with each passing day. You've come so far. Don't throw